Hey guys, hope you're well. My name is Rob. Welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my Super League Round 2 power rankings. Let's get started. Starting with 12th place and still in 12th, I have Salford Red Devils. Had to play the kids in round 1, so they were last on the power rankings with an asterisk. Then they had pretty much a full team available, trying to think who was unavailable. Can't have been many this week against Leeds, but I was thinking at least a somewhat decent effort, and I did change my prediction to have them winning, but I would have at least liked to have seen a somewhat valiant effort, which we only got for about the first 2 minutes. But yeah, Salford, no reason to move them off the bottom, even though I think in a few weeks' time they will be above some other teams, but as of right now, Salford still in 12th. Moving on to 11th place, I have the Huddersfield Giants. They have a lot to work out. They're going to go through a tough period at the moment, and there's a few adjustments that they need to make. I think in time they'll look a little bit cleaner as the season goes on and hopefully get a bit more stability. But as of right now, I think in terms of strength, I don't think they'll be challenging too many teams, and they could really struggle this year, at least in the early stages as they go through an adjustment period. But Huddersfield Giants in 11th. Moving on to 10th place, I have the Castleford Tigers. So in comparison to the Huddersfield Giants, I think Castleford are a slightly more exciting attacking team. They play with a bit more pace. I think their ability to break lines looks a little bit stronger than Huddersfield's at the moment, especially with Tex Hoy, what he can do. Fletcher Rooney will develop as time goes on, especially with Rowan Milnes out for another maybe 3 weeks, roughly, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4. So there's time for him to develop. Hoy will still have to keep learning in the 7 role, and Assey will develop over time as well, because he's not a complete player. Some people were really excited about him, but I was aware that they were not signing a complete player. They still had a lot of work to do. The forwards do work really hard, though. They were dominated massively, so I think the game against Saints was more about Saints being really good than Castleford being really bad. I didn't look at Castleford's effort and think they were shocking. I just thought they were just beaten in areas. It's not like they just couldn't spread the ball at all. They definitely had to go, and there was a couple line breaks in there. They played with a bit of pace. The defensive scramble was good at times, but they were just beaten by a much stronger, much quicker, better Saints team. So, yeah, more of a reflection on Saints than it was for Castleford, but the Tigers still in 10th. Moving on to 9th place, I have the Catalans Dragons. Now, I do want to say, their performance against Warrington wasn't too bad. Now, some of the problems that Warrington had to deal with were their own fault, but in terms of carries through the middle, Catalans were dominant. In terms of spreading the ball to the edges and getting offloads, Catalans were dominant. I don't know how many they had at full time. I'll have to check the stats, but I don't know how many offloads they had, but it was a ridiculous number. In terms of getting themselves in 1v1 situations, they did a great job, made Warrington miss tackles. And then, on top of that, defensive contact, first hits, not allowing Warrington to get easy post-contact meters through the middle. So, they were actually the better team for 80 minutes, to be honest. I really don't know how they lost that game, but obviously weren't really there against Hull FC. Again, 2 of the tries they conceded were more off chaos than creation, so I can give them a little bit of leeway on that. And I think they were the better team against Warrington. The only reason why they're below maybe 1, possibly 2 teams at a stretch on this list is only because they've not been able to pick up a win. But in terms of their performances, not been terrible. But in terms of attack, it will take time, but they need a little bit of work. So Catalans Dragons in 9th. Moving on to 8th place, I have the Leeds Rhinos. There was part of me that wanted to put them below Catalans, but I think just because of how good the turnaround was against Salford and the quality of that Salford team, I do have to put Leeds above them, and the fact that they have now actually won a game compared to Catalans. But in my head, I do have Catalans almost on par at the moment. It's quite close for me personally. Don't know about you guys, but it was kind of difficult deciding who goes above who. But I think with Leeds, they've now got the win against a very strong Salford squad. Turn up with a lot more energy and desire. They weren't afraid to attack the short sides as well, and they got Salford's defence really out of shape. I thought it could be a tough day when they conceded very early. They were helped a little bit with a sin bin for Salford. Joe Shorrock's got himself 10 minutes in the bin, so that would have helped with momentum as well. At least, I believe it would have been quite early on in the second half. But still to have that kind of dominance over the course of 80 minutes, to turn things around as much as they did after week 1. I don't mind having Leeds Rhinos in 8th. Moving on to 7th place, I have Hull FC. There's a chance that they could be moving up and down a few times over the next few weeks and not really have a stable position like some teams might. Now, there is a for and against in terms of the start to the season. The argument in favour of Hull FC right now is that they have so many new players and a new head coach. It could take time to adjust, really learn and develop with each other and get to where they want to be. There's still time to get there. It's only round 2. But that's the argument for is at this time, and then there's a lot of new players. The argument against is look at the quality of the players. We understood why Hull FC were either getting battered or just losing as much as they did last season. Hull FC fans knew why, everyone else knew why. But even though you're going to have to go through an adjustment period, which is understandable, maybe at least on the attacking side for the most part, defensively, with the quality that's there, I understand there being a disconnect with new players, but in terms of the quality they've got, they cannot be conceding that many points. So as much as you can understand time to adjust and adapt with a new squad, the quality doesn't excuse that. This is not last year's squad. This is a playoff contention squad on paper. And as good as Wigan have been over the last few years with their attack, you just cannot be conceding that many points with that quality amongst the side. So there is time for them to improve on both sides of the ball, but I guess right now they're just about in the middle of the pack with being decent and then really poor. But I guess we'll have to see over the next few weeks where they can kind of place themselves and see if they can get a bit of stability as time goes on. But Hull FC in 7th. Moving on to 6th place, I have Wakefield Trinity. Back-to-back resilient performances in defence, great scramble efforts. Because you come up against some individuals for Leeds. Leeds were not great round 1, but some of the individuals that you have to deal with, the speed that they've got in terms of, and power as well with Ryan Hall, speed of Handley and Newman, the elusiveness that Croft has, the speed through the ruck that Andy Ackers can provide. Like it's tough individuals to have to come up against. And they shut the door a lot, and then going into this game against Hull KR, yes, Hull KR were a little bit predictable, unfortunately, at times, but scramble defence was really, really good. The intensity to spread the ball inside the middle third was good. I think where they lacked the most was probably spreading the ball inside Hull KR's 10. So when they didn't really have the space to work with, and Hull KR put enough defensive line speed out there to put pressure on Wakefield's attacking line, they didn't really know how to get around that, and it was pretty dull attacking sets inside the 10. But when they're in the middle third or had a little bit of room to work with, they'd spread the ball with some good pace. The passes were a little bit off at times, taking players out of stride, but especially down that right-hand side, moving the ball nicely, getting Pratt into some good position to eat up meters down the edges, and was eventually rewarded towards the back end of the game with a try. So still good work through the middle. They're competing fairly nicely, putting in some good efforts. I just think probably missing Truman last week. They could have won that if Truman was available, but I think with the halves options that they've got, there's some speed in there, there's good experience, there's some quality there, and they will adapt. But I think the base level that Wakefield's already at is really solid. Really, really solid, and they can, be strong playoff contenders by the end of the year if they can maintain this and even make improvements overall individually throughout the squad as well for players that are still quite new to Super League. So, good start for Wakefield. Pleasantly surprised. So, Wakefield Trinity in 6th. Moving on to 5th place, I have Hull Kingston Rovers. The only thing saving them right now from not being below Wakefield is the fact that they beat them. Because trust me, if Wakefield managed to get that win, like if they got to overtime with a conversion at the end and then won it, my God, I would love to put Hull KR below Wakefield after the most tedious kicking performance I've ever seen from any team. Possibly ever. I understand that there are arguments that kind of branch out from what I'm about to say, But all it was short side left to Mikey Lewis for him to chip the ball to the back left. Sometimes there'd be good kick pressure, sometimes there wasn't. Sometimes they'd pin Wakefield back, sometimes they'd give away a penalty and just let them out their own end. It was incredibly boring, predictable, uneventful. No thought going into anything whatsoever. Now, there's a few times he tried to spread the ball a bit, get Gildart in a bit of space or Evalds, but it was just same old for most of the game. And it was just a few individual efforts here and there that just dragged him through it. I think most people say, well, the reason for that predictability is, well, Mikey Lewis is the only player in the halves that started, so look, what else do you want them to do? They're not really going to spread the ball much and link up with Petiku in that way. And I'm thinking, you know what? That's fair. But where I question you on that is, if you have that argument, is why did they pick that lineup when there was a much clearer option to go with? First of all, McIllorum doesn't move much with the ball. Now, yes, he gets stuck in defensively. That's never really been in doubt for me. Gets stuck in defensively, but he doesn't run with the ball. He doesn't move much. So in terms of him as a hooker in comparison to other hookers, he's probably got a bit more energy to spare and is more likely to be able to fill in that role for 80 minutes. You could keep him there for 80 minutes. Jez Litton is then free to drop into the number 7 role where he's played last year. He's also not afraid to take on the kicking game. Why not start Lewis and Litton as the 6 and 7? Is beyond me. And if you absolutely need to, like if you want to give McIllorum a bit of leeway, you could have put Minchella on the bench, start Hadley at 13 where he had a little bit of experience there last year, especially in the semi-final, and then Minchella could rotate as the 9 off the bench. Like, there's other options, but you just kind of chuck Petiku into the number 7 role and you just make yourselves one-dimensional right from the jump. It just... Yes, it was a boring performance from them. Few individuals helped them out, but I think the team choice didn't do them any favours. Litton and Lewis were right there. There's other options that you could have gone with. You could have then had Hiku back as a number 3, where he's comfortable. Yeah. I would have loved to put Hull KR down after that boring performance, but yeah. The fact that they've won both games now, they've managed to get it done, is what has them above Wakefield right now. But yeah, Hull Kingston Rovers in 5th. Moving on to 4th place, I have the Warrington Wolves. Now let me try and make sense of this, because what I'm going to say isn't really going to make sense to a lot of people, but I think hopefully I can work towards a coherent argument. It makes sense to me that Warrington are above the teams that they are above. I feel like there's justification for having them above these teams. It doesn't make sense to me that Warrington are as high as they are. Now, is that an indication of other teams being extremely poor? Maybe. Or is there actual good reason why Warrington are as high as 4th at the moment? Well, the arguments against Warrington being high up the power rankings. Number 1, in terms of attacking performances, very stale. A lot of disconnect, very sloppy, very boring, very predictable at times. It has been pretty dull watching us with the ball, unfortunately. It has been a lot of individual efforts really dragging us out. So Ben Curry's done some good stuff through the middle in the loose forward position. He's adjusting fairly nicely in that role. But it's Williams, or it's Dufty, or it's Walker. It's you go-to guys elevating you. And that's what you'd hope them to do if you're in the shit, but you don't want them to have to do it constantly. And it's those individuals just elevating us slightly. Just. Now, on the defensive side, I actually can't fault Warrington, and I think a lot of people need to take our defensive side very seriously, because our goal line defence looks really strong. My biggest issues with our defence is deep in enemy territory, we let teams out very easily, and in the middle third, we allow so many easy meters. And against Catalans especially, we were dominated through the middle. Wasn't even close. We were demolished. Through post-contact meters, we allowed too many offloads, we didn't wrap the ball up enough, and there was too many one-on-ones. So, missed tackles. But when it came to goal line defence, I can't really fault them. So I think the strength of our defence in important positions puts us above most of the teams, if not all the teams that we're above at the moment. But in terms of how stale we are in attack and field position, most of the field position that we've earned in both games has been off the back of gifted penalties and just ill-discipline and errors from Catalans and Huddersfield Giants. We haven't really earned it enough, and I would like us to start spreading the ball earlier in the set and in our own half. And hopefully we can get back to what we were. Now again, it's only round 2, but yeah, it just feels weird putting us this high given the performances so far, but I think it's literally the fact that we've won both games and the defensive resilience on the goal line helps us, and a few individual efforts to get those wins just elevates us up to 4th. But there is no way they could be in a top 3 right now. Given how everyone else has played that's up there, they just can't be top 3. So Warrington Wolves in 4th. Moving on to 3rd place, I have the Wigan Warriors. It's pretty clear now their attack might be firing. And they might still have some stale performances like they did in round 1, which was very stale, very lacklustre, and a little bit boring and predictable at times. But what this Wigan team does extremely well is they play a flat style with so much speed. And the way I kind of reference them is like if you imagine table football, right? You've got one figure, then you've got another figure. They're in line with each other. But what they kind of do is when they play that flat style, they'll line up one-on-one. They'll maybe have Smith down the left or even French down the right. That's just a ball that gets shot across the line, and then one of the players from Wigan just darts to the side, makes the outside line, and goes past. So if you just imagine their attack like it's table football, you got all the players in line, they run a flat style, and then the players just kind of dart to the outside as a unit, like that. That's being pulled over to one side, and then they're just through. They find a gap. But they do it with so much speed. You just can't really stop it at times, especially when they go short side left with Smith, Insemba, Wardle and Marshall. They just pull it off so well. The one thing that I think needs to be pointed out is they pass the ball forward a lot. Wardle passed the ball to Marshall forwards a lot than what is definitely called by referees, but they're still making those plays happen in the first place. And they're extremely dangerous down that left edge. The carries through the middle are insanely good. They get quick play the balls for Forber and especially Leeming to feed off the back of, and it also puts Smith and Bevan French on the front foot. Jay Field, early days at the moment, but man of steel contender right now. He's been electric in this Super League season. So Wigan could be all good to go for the rest of the season now in attack. We'll see. And defensively, they've conceded 1 try. So as much as people complain about that round 1 performance, they've conceded 1 try in 2 games. So, yeah, Wigan Warriors in 3rd. Moving on to 2nd place, I have the Leigh Leopards. Back-to-back weeks now. Defensive resilience has been huge for them. They conceded most of their points against Huddersfield from penalties. So that's something they could clean up. That's not like a huge, massive problem within the camp where this is going to take weeks to fix a kind of structure. No, discipline can be fixed on a week-to-week basis. It's just about individuals just being more disciplined. That can be fixed. So in terms of conceding points in that area, they could be a lot stronger going into this next week. So to only concede most of their points from penalties, obviously you don't want the ill discipline, but it's a testament to their defensive resilience. In terms of attack, you could tell what they were trying to do against Wigan, and they were able to pull it off more so against Huddersfield. Understandable. Difference in quality. Defensive quality especially. David Armstrong is still a little bit raw at the moment and will improve over time. But you can tell that with the speed that he's got, with the intensity that he plays with, the willingness to just drive through the line, in a few weeks' time, he could be really pushing for Man of Steel. Like I said it in their preview video, in Leigh's preview video, that, I wouldn't be surprised if he's in that conversation and fighting for it Early days, he's still a little bit raw, and he will take a little bit more time to connect with Lamb and O'Brien. But when they do, and they'll have sparks as the next few weeks go by, where we see it, when they get it exactly right where they want to be, Leigh could be really, really dangerous. I think the biggest area where they lack is through the middle. Now, they do put in really strong, gutsy efforts through the middle with some good carries that are helped sometimes with the backs from Tessinu, for example. He does put in some really strong carries. But I think there will be some games over the season where the middles just won't really be able to compete, and that will be their biggest issue. But in terms of defensive resilience, speed in attack, which suits Armstrong and Lamb massively, it will just be, I think in some games in the middles, we won't quite be able to compete, and that will just be the reason for some of the losses this season. But Leigh looking really strong at the moment, and hopefully they can build on this. But yeah, Leigh Leopards in second. Finally, in first place, I have St Helens. I'm not going to ramble on too much about this one because, for me, this is quite simple. They're in first place with an asterisk because they played the kids. They put in their best individual performance. Yes, the team that they played against was not the strongest, obviously. But in order to keep their position in first place, they did probably more than what was necessary. Because they could have held their position with a solid win over Cass. I was expecting Castleford to put in hopefully a slightly resilient effort like they did against Hull Kingston Rovers. I thought, well, here's a great chance for Saints maybe to receive a bit of a challenge this week. And they just dealt with it way beyond even what I expected. There was a little bit of ill discipline in the first half, and there was maybe a tiny bit in the second, but in terms of discipline, over the course of 80 minutes, really professional. The only disappointing thing about Saints is they could have been slightly better disciplined, and it still would have been incredible discipline for 80 minutes. That's the worst thing about their performance. That's it. Their defence was excellent, whether it be pinning Cass back, in the middle third, or inside their own half. Defensively brilliant. In terms of attack, they can move anywhere. They can beat you up through the middle, so the forwards can get the extra metres through the carries. Clark can feed off the back of that if he feels like it, which most of the time he does, so good luck dealing with him. Then you've got the left edge, if you want to go with Lomax, and he can link up with Sirenen, who has really strong lines in the red zone, or Percival, who's looked really, really quick and is running with a lot of intent. And then either Benison or Murphy. It'll be Benison for a little while now. But over on the right-hand side, you've then got Saylor, who's got Batchelor in support, and Robertson, who's done a really good job so far in the centre position as a young lad, and then Felt, who can finish anything he likes in the corner. And then you've got Jack Welsby, who was clearly man of the match for me. It was possibly going to be Passy for a little while, but it was clearly by the end of the game Jack Welsby, who just shifts either side, taking on quite a bit of the kicking game so far as well. He's just in control of everything and just links up really nicely in attack, controlling both sides. Saints just went above and beyond what they needed to stay locked into first place at the moment. And it's going to take a lot of work to dislodge them, I think, over the next few weeks. So yeah, Saints were very professional, very clinical, executed very nicely in attack and defence. So St Helens in first place. So that's going to be it for my Super League Round 2 power rankings. If you guys have your own list, do let me know in the comments down below if you thought anyone should be anywhere else. Also let me know. But hopefully this looks a little bit more like something that we can all agree on. But yeah, that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to stay up to date with more Rugby League content. And check out the Kinetic Rugby League website in the description down below. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.